Welcome to the Beautiful Step Podcast,
where we
run,
stomp,
tiptoe,
and tango into the confusing
but beautiful
world of togetherness. We are your hosts, Kris
and Charity.
Now, let's go make our together even better. Hi, babe.
What's with your crooked headphones? It's like your forehead can hear.
It's because I'm mixing something mellow right now.
Oh, okay. Is it to go with the gloomy weather?
In the cabin we're stuck in for a really long time.
It's really gloomy. Tons of rain.
But it's a good gloomy, you know what I mean?
No.
Really? All right.
I don't like the rain. That's just me. I don't really like the rain. Do you like the rain?
Was that thing on the whole time?
Yeah.
Okay, good. The heater's on. I got my coffee.
Cheers.
What do you have, tea?
Tea. Mint tea.
I love you.
Love you.
All right, what are we talking about today? Because it's a mellow day.
It's a mellow day. Are you going to take those off, or do I need to take you seriously with those on there like that?
What, you don't like these?
I like them, but they're crooked.
Oh. This is the way that the kids wear these days, man.
Oh, right. Okay, well, hey, whatever.
I'm taking them off.
Your boat.
I'm taking them off, okay.
Your boat.
Just know that every once in a while, I may just kind of bring in a little bit of that too.
Really? Okay. All right. I like it.
You know, I want to talk about something serious today.
You do?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
It's, this is going to come up. Any human being on the planet is going to have to deal with this idea of forgiveness.
Yeah.
Did I just drop it?
You did. And that's a hard one.
It's hard because it is, if you're in a relationship, if you have any meaningful relationships, right? Well, let's just say this. Every single person on the planet has daddy issues.
And
I can't
mommy
believe
issues.
And mommy issues. I can't believe that I actually gave I'm the perfect dad. I mean, come on.
You're really
I'm a good dad, but my kids have daddy issues. I know they do.
Yeah.
They got to talk to somebody about this stuff.
Yeah.
But, so this topic comes up often enough, right? It comes up often enough with the people you and I meet and have counseled. Sure. And have talked to.
Every person on the planet. Yeah.
To where I think and it not only that, but it came up there a little while ago with a really meaningful, wonderful family member of mine, who it's been really fun to rekindle. Anyway, so we talk through stuff and we sit here and talk all night. But I was trying to give him my rundown on forgiveness.
Oh, give me a rundown on forgiveness.
Can I give you a rundown on forgiveness? I think it's really, really helpful. And now, can we just start by saying, we've seen horrible things that people do to each other.
Yes.
You and I have talked people through some of the worst things I could think of.
Yes.
And yet there's this idea that, and I don't know if it's an idea, I think it's a truth, that if you don't forgive, you're going to get cancer. Or like if you don't forgive, it's not going to go well for you. It's going to harm you.
Yeah.
Somebody back me up.
Unforgiveness is certainly, it's been proven to
so
be
unhealthy.
Toxic to your body even. Mm-hmm. Besides your spirit and your mind and your, soul, it's toxic to your body as well. Yeah.
Right.
Carrying bitterness.
And so I think that is a really good point. So let's just start here. You have to agree that unforgiveness is bad. Like, you have to start with that. Like, it's actually not good. It's a toxic thing. And here's why I'm saying that, is because we're so bent on revenge.
Yeah. We're
so bent on justice, right? I mean, come on. Could you sit through a movie where the villain actually gets away?
No. I like justice in my movies. I want all the bad guys killed and like all that.
And we love this stuff. Like, what's the one where Denzel?
Oh, yeah.
The Equalizer?
Yeah. Totally. I love that
I
stuff.
want to be the Equalizer.
Yeah.
I want to do that all the time. I want to get people back, revenge. I mean, it's just so satisfying to get people back on revenge. But here's typically the problem. Here's one of the first things that I've learned about forgiveness that comes online right away is like, I'm never going to do a thorough enough job of getting anyone back who's ever hurt me.
So true. Even if you enacted some sort of punishment, there still in your mind should be more.
Yeah, I mean, if you go through all of the things that person has to do in order for you to forgive them, and they do it, there'll be just one more. Yeah. And you're going to keep on kind of doing that. So I think that really, here's how this worked out is I was talking to, I've talked to so many people about this, but this is where being religiously literate really does come in handy. In that I've heard of forgiveness on a few different, let's just say that every religion is going to walk you through this. Yeah.
Forgiveness is a part of every religion.
It's so important. Mm-hmm. It's so deeply important. But I think because I'm more well-versed with the Christian religion, and this is a really dear precept to me, and kind of a discipline in my life, and a thing that has, I believe, really set me free and saved me from a lot of trouble, and has healed.
Idea?
Yeah, the Christian idea of forgiveness. And I'm not going to do like an exhaustive approach on it. I mean, there's just so much about it, and there's, it's pretty much the whole thing. Christianity. It's like there's so many ways you could talk about, but can I talk to you about it in a way that I think is really helpful?
Yeah, please do.
Okay, so I'll try to be brief.
Okay.
I'll try not to preach. But here's the way this works out. Is in the Christian religion, right, you have God, the Father, who, in the Bible, and we're talking about forgiveness now, mm-hmm. right? And by the way, the whole idea is that you need to be forgiven. First off, like if you want to buy into Christianity, you have to buy into the fact that you're born into sin, that you're a bad person, not because you're bad, but because Adam was bad and your sin was attributed to you.
Sure.
Right. So you're bad. You're not good. You don't have the capacity for God. He has to get, it's a long, okay.
Which is debatable, but that's the premise. Yes.
That's the premise of where I have to start.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
So you start out with, you need to be forgiven. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So you have this God, above or whatever, who is God the Father, who is in heaven saying to you, I remember your sins no more. As far as the east is from the west, I have removed your guilt and your shame and and he's even doing this stuff in the Old Testament when they would make sacrifices and stuff like that. He would, I remember your sin no more. Yet on the same, in the same book, in the same religion, you even have Jesus Christ, who is, the Redeemer of mankind, according to Christians, who is saying, like, in the end, my Father's going to separate the sheep from the goats.
Right.
In the end, like, you will give an account for every careless word you have ever spoken.
Yeah.
I will remember everything about you, and you're going to have to actually stand before God and give an account for your life. You know what I mean? And that's where they, I'll plead the blood or whatever. But guess what? God, and even the Apostle Paul gets in on this, where he's talking about, you are storing up wrath for yourself on the day of wrath, baby. And so you have a God who is in heaven, who is asking us to forgive and forget, yet he doesn't. Like,
but he says he does.
On one hand, he is like totally forgetful, and I love it. Like, hey, I remember your sins no more. This is wonderful. But then on the other hand, he's like, you're gonna, any careless word you ever speak, I'll remember to the day you're dead.
This is so confusing to me.
And so here's the problem: is what happened, and I think, in a religious training, especially if you're devoted to it, like a devotional religious training, what'll happen is they'll say, typically, if you come up against a dichotomy like this, mm-hmm. what you need to do is change your definitions. Yeah. The Bible doesn't change its definitions. You need to go, okay, well, what does it really mean to forgive and forget?
Yeah.
If God doesn't forget anything.
Yeah.
And he's asking me to forget? And so here's the bottom line, the basic notion that I think is really important to understand here is that, yes, you have sinned, according to Christians, yes, you have sinned. And yes, God remembers it. But guess what? He's not killing you. He's not getting vengeance on you right now. He's not making you pay for that sin right now. Does that make sense? Okay. So what it means for God to forget, it cannot mean not remember. It has to mean something different. And so what God, in the Christian sense, to forgive and forget, according to God in the Christian world, is, it doesn't mean not remember. It means that you stop acting on what you do remember.
Yeah.
You stop, and we're going to go a long way with this, but it's the idea is you really do stop acting in the same way. If you're vengeful, and if you're like high justice, kill everyone.
Yeah.
You stop acting on what you remember in that way.
Yeah.
Because it's killing you.
So that's an important point, because you said two things. You said, don't act on what you know. But that's not really what you're saying. You then followed it up with, don't act in the same way on what you know.
Right.
Which I think is the distinction. Because I'm not going to go around and pretend like I don't know that person is a terrible person.
You can't forget it.
No, that's totally...
the stuff that's happened to people, to me, to you. I mean, the trusts that have been broken or the harms that have been done, you can't forget it.
No. And
no one's telling you to forget it.
No, and honestly, you should be speaking up and saying something if it hasn't been said. But what you're saying is like the concept of forgive and forget is not forget like it's leaving your mind, but rather you're remembering it differently. Or you're not actually remembering the situation differently, but you're acting differently according to the memory.
Here's what I think about.
Yeah.
And I think this is the thing that's helped me is so many times I need to forget how I have acted in the past.
Yeah.
I need to, and I love Thich Nhat Hanh is this Buddhist guy who looks just like Yoda. And he says, those thoughts that are toxic or whatever, he goes, that must be removed. Just really softly, like, that must be removed, And to think, wait, what if, like, I could just have a long enough moment here to go, wait, what if I acted differently on what I remember? Or what if I needed to forget something about myself? I need to forget something about the way that I'm reacting. I need to forget.
I like that.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And remember, maybe remember means to learn. Maybe remember means to be like, wait, remember the fact that like I can control my emotions. Remember the fact, like, there's so much that happens, like when you come into the presence of someone whom you haven't forgiven, and how they can make you forget all the wisdom you've ever been taught, man. Like, you know what I mean? You're like,
yes,
you turn into mush, dude. Like,
yeah. You can't see past the rage and all the things. You can't see past the way that you've handled it before. Which this idea is so cool, because I think what happens is forgetting, you say like maybe you should forget things about yourself that you've done in the past or the way that you've handled it in the past. What I love about this is, what if you forget
what you've done toward them in the past.
Right, yeah. But the way you've processed it before. What I think we forget when it comes to wisdom, forgiveness, is that we forget that the whole point of forgiveness is so that we're free.
I love it.
And we want the point of forgiveness to be that somehow they're reconciled, or somehow like they become a better person, and like, no, time out.
Okay. So let me go Thich Nhat Hanh on you really quick. you think your unforgiveness will change that person. That should be removed.
Yes.
You're not going to change
No.
that person. No. You're not going to change that person through unforgiveness or forgiveness.
Exactly. The problem lies in the fact that we have forgotten the point of forgiveness. We have forgotten the point of forgiveness, and the point of forgiveness is so that we are free. You know, you always hear
The
people
hardest thing you're ever going to do for yourself.
Yes. You hear those like adages of, well, the only person in prison when you have unforgiveness is the person who is not forgiving. The other person usually has no idea what's even going on in your mind. They don't even know that they've offended you. Or maybe if they actually have harmed you, they're thinking about it much differently than you. So don't be the fool that thinks like somehow you're getting them back by not forgiving. The only person that's really harming is you. So we forget that the point of forgiveness is so that we are more free.
And in the back of the church, we're raising a hanky going, preach it, girl.
Yeah.
It's so key.
Yes. So you brought up you talked about how when you have those dichotomies, like, and you referenced the Bible where, well, is God forgetting or is he bringing to mind everything you've ever done?
Because he says he forgets, yet he's good. Yeah.
Which of these dichotomies is it? Which of these things, how do you hold two conflicting ideas in your mind at one time? And this is the concept of cognitive dissonance, where you're like, somehow I can believe that there's one way, but then there's this other way. And when we are in a situation of cognitive dissonance, when we're like, how do I know that smoking's bad for me, but I still like to smoke? What do I do with that? Well, the only way to resolve cognitive dissonance, and the reason your brain will do it every single time is look for a resolve, is to change your frame.
Come on.
If in that situation I'm saying, I know smoking's bad for me, but I really like to smoke. I don't know what to do with these competing ideas.
Right.
Well, what I'll do to resolve that cognitive dissonance is I'll say, smoking isn't that bad for me. I'll either move one standard to say smoking isn't that bad for me, therefore I'm okay with still liking it.
You know how I tell myself because I smoke like my pipe at night. And I know it's terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. Well, I say to myself, well, I didn't smoke for 25 years.
Right.
I'm going to go out like
Yes.
I can't get cancer that quick.
Well, so you did the other one, like you changed that I'm not really a smoker.
Right.
And well, actually, I see this all the time. Like people apply for life insurance and they're like, well, I'm not really a smoker. I only smoke my pipe every day once. And it's like, so what we do though, what I want to bring up is that's the reframing. That's the repositioning so that your mind can handle those competing ideas, that cognitive dissonance. And what you're saying with forgiveness is like, well, okay, how does God forget and hold you accountable? Well, there's this other mechanism that says basically he's not forgetting, but what you're saying is he's remembering it.
He's not acting on what he knows. He's not like, so you have this promise of God that like, even when Adam ate the apple, the day you eat it, you will surely die.
Right.
Yet he didn't die.
Yeah.
So, you're like, wait, what? Like, he doesn't always act on what he knows about people, right?
Right.
And that's the I guess the convenience or whatever of the Christian faith, or one of the beauties of it, I guess, is that it opens up this idea that you can really begin to, like you're saying, change your frame. Stop acting in the same way on what you remember about your dad or your mom or your wife. Like, and it's like, to me, that's just, first off, like, what?
Yeah.
I thought I thought I had to feel vengeful. I thought I had to continually be hurt. I thought I had to, like, my blood pressure goes to 120. Like, it, or else I don't care about, like, virtue and all of, I start to feel guilty if I'm not mad at that person whom I haven't forgiven.
Yeah.
Because it seems right.
Yeah.
It seems just, right?
Yes.
You see what I'm saying?
Yes. So how do you change the frame? Because what if that person really has fallen short from everything that you had hoped they would be.
Okay, so let me go into the way it actually works.
Okay.
Like, it's easy to be like, well, just stop acting on what you know, or act differently, you know, or stop remembering about, you know, the way you used to act. I think those are helpful. I'm not trying to be, you know, belittle that, but here's one of the biggest pieces that I put together as this thought sort of came online in my brain and in my spirit and in my heart is I needed to stop acting on what I remember about, I mean, pick someone, right? Like, it could be anybody's father or, you know, mom or whatever. So here's what I do is now I realize that if I am in relationship with a person, I'm going to have expectations.
Yeah.
Especially if it's a meaningful person to me, especially if it's a person who in society has a certain role.
Yeah.
And that role has, like, you know, fathers don't hurt children.
Right.
You know, moms nurture even young boys.
Yeah.
You know, and when that stuff it doesn't happen, you start to go, oh, I'll never forgive you for what I did or what I didn't do. And here's the thing is the way that I sort this out now is I've started to understand that I walk in with all these expectations about what it means to be, say, a perfect mom, perfect dad. And what I'm realizing is so often the people whom I am expecting these things from don't actually have the capacity to fulfill those expectations.
Yeah.
And it's not a thing of like, they don't want to, or they're just not, they're too lazy, or they're just not thinking about me enough.
Right.
Or they don't love me enough in order to do it. No. It's an ability thing.
Yeah.
It's okay. And here's the way I sort this out. And I think this is really helpful. There's so many parallels to the physical realm and the spiritual realm. It's beautiful. Like, there's tons of poetic literature all throughout religion,
right?
You know, that relates the physical to, you know, the spiritual. Like, you know, the more you use your faith, the stronger it'll get, just like your body. You know, a professional athlete runs the race. You know, all this stuff. So the thing that I realized about when I'm talking about capacity and when I'm really trying to get some empathy online for the person whom I know I have to forgive so hard is, let's just put it this way. That person can't do it. They can't meet your expectations. Just like if I sat on a couch for a year and you come in, or someone comes into my place with a new pair of shoes and says, okay, time for you to get up and run this marathon. We're running it right now. Put your shoes on. Let's go. If I was sitting on a couch for a year, I couldn't even stand.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of times people will spiritually, relationally, emotionally handicap themselves because they've done no real hard work on themselves, you know, spiritually, or even, you know, trying to
This is the person sitting on the couch.
This is the person sitting on the couch. Like, the person that you have to forgive, man, they're out of shape, or however you want to look at it. They don't have the capacity. They have either physically handicapped themselves, or maybe they were born with no leg.
Yeah, maybe they was never modeled for them. They don't know how to do that. You're asking them to do something that they quite literally don't know how to do.
I think that is very generous of you to say don't know how to do, because I don't know. The more I have observed people who have been able to hurt people in ways that I'm like, oh man. And then to not be able to own it or make it right, they literally don't have the ability.
Yeah.
Seriously. I mean, it's not as though they don't even know how. I mean, because you can tell them, like, you need to do this, this, and this. And it either just comes off really insincere, or it just doesn't really do the thing that you think. Like, they just don't have whatever that thing is.
We're all coming from different, like, playing fields.
And again, we're talking about my expectations.
Yes.
We're not talking about how everybody else in the whole world sees this. We're just talking about this person does not have the capacity or the ability to meet my expectations.
They could either not know them, they could not be able
Right.
to meet them.
Right.
They could not. And so part of empathy, I think, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's like part of empathy is going, do they even have what it takes to actually, one, know what I'm expecting, and then two, able to do it? Are they able to stand up off that couch and run that race in a way that like is going to meet your expectations? Well, probably not.
Right.
Which we're all having to go back and sort that out. Like, oh, the people in our lives that we thought were capable of doing something might not have been capable of doing something. And we've all got those situations in our life where we've thought we should be able to do something, and for some reason we just can't get there.
I know. It's so funny because that's one of the or definitions of religion that I've heard is this idea of like, it is this expectation and this role and these goals that you can just never actually hit.
Sure.
And that's what oftentimes religion does to keep you under it.
Yeah.
And what I'm getting at is when you're the person who has been harmed, that's a lot of times what you're going to do.
Yeah.
You're going to keep them under this thing.
Yes. I totally, yeah. I can't even think about the idea of like totally forgetting
No.
and not acting on what somebody does. But it does help me to go, I can change my frame. And,
Yes.
And one, as the first tool, is like have some empathy and realize the capacity might not be there for what's expected. That is a really important thing to note.
Whether it's they don't know how or they really just could never pull it off.
Yeah.
You know, like they're just not going to pull it off.
Yeah.
It's not going to occur to them.
Yeah. The grandparent might not ever be that grandparent, that quintessential grandparent you wanted them to be for your children, or your spouse could never be that really nurturing person that you needed from them. But these are things that you have decided, right? We all have decided the standard we want to set for other people's behavior.
Wives should be, whatever.
Yes.
Dads should be whatever.
Yes.
Moms
This idea
should be, however that goes.
And so
I mean, okay, just quickly though, we're not just talking about like, societal roles. We're talking about deep pain.
yes, and roles that they might have said that they could play. Like it's beyond
or are expected to.
Yes, it's beyond just what was expected of them, but it is, sometimes people set themselves out there as being something that they just simply are not.
Right.
And so what I love about this is this reframing in order to bring your own personal freedom and forgiveness in your life is like the reframing to go, okay, I'm going to have empathy. They probably can't do this thing that I'm asking. And so I need to relook at it and go, what am I asking? And is that fair? Is that realistic? Is that something that they have said that they were going to be? But
Right.
it doesn't, the point I'm getting to is it doesn't actually matter.
Right.
None of that matters. It doesn't, no one in your life is really that impacted by what you expect from them. We're all just trying to do what we can do.
Right.
Like it motivates us somewhat. And I was listening to somebody and they were saying like, well, okay, for instance, in Buddhism, they say, well, suffering comes from desire. Right. If you get rid of desire, then you will not suffer anymore. Well, what is desire?
It's like stop wanting.
Yeah. What is desire? Desire is something, you want something that you don't have, or else you wouldn't desire it because you already have it.
Right.
Desire is wanting something that is not. So suffering comes from wanting something that is not already there.
Right.
It's wanting somebody to be something that they are not.
Or say something that they should.
Yes.
Or do something that would solve the whole thing.
So.
And guess what? Ain't happening.
No. Suffering decreases or goes away completely when we actually stop expecting what is not. And we embrace what is.
We embrace what is.
Suffering happens, it goes away when we're like, okay, wait a second, let me just accept what is. Mm-hmm. And stop putting myself in this situation where I'm always being let down because I'm expecting something that is not. And here's the deal. It's different when I have ambitions about myself and I'm like, I'm suffering a little bit because I'm angsty about like what I know I'm capable of and what I'm not meeting.
Yeah.
But it's really bad when you do that about other people. And we all do this about other people. One is I have the locus of control. Like that's something I can control. I can actually fix that suffering because I can do something about it.
Right.
Well, when it comes to another person, there's no resolve to that suffering because you're dependent on the other person to fix something, which is altogether a bad goal. Bad goals stem from you not having control of them.
Yes.
So,
and that's the whole thing is that, I don't know if we've said this already, but come on. You cannot change the other person.
Cannot. Do not be a fool. No
amount of unforgiveness or forgiveness is actually going to change them.
No, you could be pissed off all day long. It's not going to change them. You could be totally like, forgiving and everything else. It's not going to change the core of the person. And the problem is that locus of control. Is that saying, okay, well, wait a second. The problem was when we place that in someone else. We say, well, I'm going to forgive you if you do all those things.
Right.
Then I will, be resolved to like, that'll meet all my expectations and I can forgive you.
Right.
Here's why that's a terrible idea. One, they might not do it. It might not be to your standard.
Right.
They might not even know you have that standard.
I'll guarantee you that it's not going to be yours.
It's just
okay.
Yeah. But the biggest thing about that is it removes the locus of control from you. If the point of forgiveness is so that you are free, why would you give that away and disempower yourself to have somebody else have control over whether you're free?
Whether you're going to be able to forgive them or not, man, that is really good.
I want to be free and I want to be able to control how free I am, which means that I'm not going to give that responsibility to you. I'm going to take that responsibility, which means the fastest way I can get that done is I can reframe and go, okay, you don't have to do all those things in order for me to have a resolve about who you are in my life. Mm-hmm. What I have to actually do with that cognitive dissonance, what I thought you should be, what you said you were going to be versus what you are, what I'm seeing, is I need to just go, okay, Charity, quit being a dummy and open up your eyes and judge according to what you're actually seeing instead of what you were told, what you thought.
Right.
It's like that Maya Angelou, like when somebody tells you who they are, believe them the first time. Yeah,
we've said that 100 times. It's like, hey, you're being an asshole. But I think you're going to be a really nice person and I should hire you. No, you're an asshole.
No. Which is why I always really hated the idea within faith that like all of a sudden people are instantly different and we should treat them according to like this newfound profession. They haven't done any of the work or changed anything and none of the behaviors are different, but hey, they said the magic thing and so now, everybody should act different.
Right.
Well, forget that in the sense of like, no, if you're actually trying to make your life free, I'm going to recategorize you in my mind. And so here's what I'm getting at.
Like work in progress kind of thing?
No, like you mentioned, like one of the first tools is like you understand that empathy comes when you realize people's capacity and you might not know. And that's where freedom comes and forgiveness comes is when you kind of recategorize it. For me, I will recategorize. I'm learning in my life to recategorize people's roles in my life. Instead of me saying, well, I'm mad because Kris isn't the perfect husband that I had decided that he should be, and it involves all of these things.
Husbands should do this, and husbands should do that.
Yeah.
And they should be this. Yeah.
Yeah. So the example might work better with something else, but like, here's the deal. You're going to be let down if you've put somebody in place as doing something in your life that they didn't really sign up for. Or that there wasn't an agreement there. Like people are always like, well, you're the mentor. And you're like, well, I didn't sign up to be the mentor. You'll hear famous athletes saying that. Well, I didn't say I was going to be your like.
I'm not your role model.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Well, here's the thing. Even if they said that they were, you can take the actions and say, I'm not going to be upset by what they're doing because I'm going to take that and I'm going to recategorize their role. Instead of being the role model, instead of being the person I look up to for like most humble person, I'm going to say, you're the person I look at for teaching me about why I should really vet this situation before I go in full bore.
So hold on. Can I stop you there?
Yeah.
So are you basically saying that those people in your life you could do this with. Those people in your life who you desperately need to forgive, you could do this with.
Yes, this is a tool. Like for me, this is what's happening in my life right now. I am having to, and have had over the last few years, to reevaluate the relationships I have. And instead of, I love it when Tony Robbins says this. He's like, quit blaming people for all the things that all the shit they brought into your life, and give them credit for the other stuff they brought into your life. Like if they were a really bad parent, also give them the credit for making you a really strong person and being really, really resilient, and that you learned and had to teach yourself how to be that. Like, look at it a different way.
Oh, right. Like my dad, I've heard, we've talked to so many broken kids, man, but yeah, my dad left me, while I was 8 years old for a week at a time or whatever.
Yes.
Shame on him.
Yes.
That should be like the worst, and the unforgiveness and but guess what? Made you a pretty resourceful guy early on.
If you're going
to Tony Robbins.
If you're going to give credit, give credit both ways. Because if the point is that you are a free person, if the point is that you are an empowered person, then learn to use everything to your advantage. I've been reading this book, and they talk about the idea, and it's 15 tools for conscious leadership. And they talk about, like, look at everyone as though they're your ally.
Yeah.
Even if they're your biggest enemy, look at them as your ally, because what are they teaching you? You're either the person that's keeping your empowerment and not removing your locus of control and putting it on other people, and you're saying, like, I'm going to be empowered because I'm going to learn from you, even though you're kind of like a lame person. There's something I'm going to learn from this situation from you.
Yeah.
So I'm going to change my framework and the role you play in my life. I'm not going to view you as the friend. I'm going to view you as the person who tells me to keep my mouth shut and not blurb secrets.
And that's the hard part. So with me, like, because, it took me so long, and I'm still working out, nuances of forgiving my own father, right?
Sure.
And it was so hard for me to, as I was coming up, because I lost my father when I was really young, I was constantly looking at father figures in my life, like, and bringing into my psyche, like, certain aspects of different men in my life, right? And so but I always had this, always had this quintessential dad that I couldn't have, right?
In your mind.
In my mind, right? And so I think what would happen is then, because these people acted in these different ways, this added up to a different role.
Yeah.
If you act like this, and this, you're like either a friend or a criminal or a cousin or a...
Yes.
You know what I mean? And so it had this like, oh, I see what you're saying. And so the tension is, for me, when I'm in, like our relationship, or, I guess we'll just use our relationship. When you have these, when I have the quintessential wife in my mind, and you act in a way that is like either dissonant from that or doesn't fulfill that expectation, the I guess the tension or the what am I thinking about? I jump to, oh, well, you're a businesswoman, or whatever role. You see what I'm saying? And so like there's this whole thing of like, how do I keep, my wife being my wife, even though she doesn't fulfill this role?
Yes.
Does that make sense?
That's so good.
Yeah.
It's so good, because what it does...
Because she's still my wife.
It comes from strength. Quit being the person that's always derailed by the deficits.
Yeah.
If we're letting other people's deficits control the way we act, then we will constantly be victims. We'll never have power. We'll be waiting for everybody to be the perfect person and to do all these things. And let's be honest, most of the time they don't even know that you're expecting that from them. We have had people come up and say to us, I forgive you for not being that role in my life. And we're like, we didn't even know that you looked at us as a parent. We're so sorry.
Right.
We didn't know. But if you would have asked us if we wanted to be your parent, we would have said,
hell no.
No. So that's on you that you made that assumption.
And here's the thing, I think the reason why I'm kind of trying to, mess with this whole idea of roles or whatever is because it's like, look, I was dropped into a world with a dad who killed himself.
Yeah.
And it's like the way he carried himself, it was the role of like a drug addict, or the role of like a, criminal, or the role of like what a deadbeat, or the role of whatever. It's like, no, tough shit, Kris. You had a dad. This was your dad. Deal with that.
Right.
And I talk to these young people too, like, well, you don't know what my dad did. You don't know what my dad did to my sister. You don't know what my dad. And it's like, you know what? That's your dad. You have to deal with that.
The suffering comes when you want it to be something that it isn't.
Exactly. Stop pretending like that's not your dad. You know what I mean? Like, stop. And that's the thing I think that will really get deep. It'll get you to a place where you can actually deal deeply with the expectations, the unforgiveness, the things that really God is trying to change or bring into, or changing you or bring into the world.
Bring,
you know what I mean?
Bring into the most free version of you.
Or what, I do have like a very robust sense of like, everyone has a purpose.
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing of like, maybe you're supposed to have worked these things out because society needs that piece of you. Yeah. That kind of stuff is what I'm getting at.
But how do you be that strongest person as a result of it? And I love what you're saying, like even when you brought up the example of me. Well, I might be a wife I am a wife that has deficits in certain areas. I've never been the most nurturing person. I've never been the lady who's like home and kind of like catering to like things you might need. But what you've done is said, I am going to quit comparing Charity to this standard that Charity never really wanted to be, or that maybe she didn't have the capacity to be. Sometimes I wanted to be those persons, but simply did not have the capacity. But you've said her role in my life, even as my wife, is according to the things that I've witnessed about her that are instead of what are not.
Yes.
The suffering comes when I'm like comparing it to something that is not going to be there.
Yeah.
But we have been able to appreciate each other because we've been able to say, okay, forget what is not. What are the things I can take? What does Kris offer me as a husband that I really need and that will make me the strongest, most happy, most free person? Let me take those things and let me categorize him in that role. It can be the husband, but this is what a husband now looks like in my mind because these are the strengths that my husband brings to me.
You've said in your brain, I forgive him for not being able to whatever. I forgive him for
we both have done that.
Dick about this forever.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is I stopped remembering. Or I started to remember something about my expectations.
I started to act different according to what I know.
Yes.
I didn't have to forget what I know about you. In fact, I keep it even closer because I'm like, I am going to act according to what I know.
Yeah.
Not according to what I wish.
Right.
Not according to what like they said, but according to what I know from their actions. That is really helpful. Yeah. So that
isn't that a helpful thought? Like the idea of
huge.
To remember doesn't mean it's going to be, oh, I have no recollection of the offense.
Yes. Yeah.
It's you stop acting on what you know. You stop acting on what you remember in the same way you always have. Or maybe you just have remember is this large category in your brain that you've built up about what that person should have done.
Yes.
You need to actually stop remembering that.
Yes.
So, that should be removed.
So I love it. The first tool is really this like empathy and understanding people's capacity and holding them to that. But then that second tool is like the reframing of what role are they going to play in your life and taking the things that actually are instead of what you had really wished. Because if the goal is your own freedom, that's where you should land. You cannot build your life according to what other people are going to do and say if you want to be a free person. That locus of control has to stay with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. I love it, babe.
So I would like to next week talk about the different ways we can actually categorize people as our allies in life.
everyone's an ally or whatever.
Yeah, like I want to kind of go
yeah.
into like maybe some examples of ways we should be looking at the things people bring into our lives and saying like, how do I categorize that different for my own freedom, so that I don't walk around bitter and angry or dissatisfied or hurt, but so that I can really kind of be the most free me.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say, just kind of in summary, you know, if you fell asleep during the podcast. The idea is very simply, you're going to remember. You're going to remember the offense. Yeah. There's no way that's going out of your mind. But you can stop acting the same way.
Yes.
And you can begin to act in, you know, a redemptive way. You can begin to act in a way that really does work toward your freedom. And you're just not going to be able to get the outcomes you want with that person. Yeah. You're not.
Well, you might even be able to get better outcomes if you figure out what it is you're actually needing from them.
That's good.
That you can use. Yeah. So
well, outcomes in your own life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Outcomes in your life. What I'm saying is like, you're not going to get, you're not going to change them.
No.
The outcomes you think that they're going to, you know, pull off because you've become so well adjusted. That's horseshit, man. You won't be able to do it. But this really is, I love what you started out with. This is for you. Oh, it's for your heart.
This is for you. This freedom is for you.
It's for your heart.
And so next week, I think let's talk about actually
I love it.
How to look at people, how to reclassify them, what roles they play. And then let's talk about what redemption actually looks like and how you walk towards that with people. Because maybe you do want to keep the relationship. Maybe you don't want to keep them classified as a stranger forever, but you want to like rebuild that. Let's look at what that looks like.
If at all possible, live at peace with all men. Yeah. That's a big deal. Like, it's that thing of every relationship has some value.
Yes,
it does. Really does.
So let's just talk about examples of that next week.
Okay, I love it.
Cool.
Wait, babe! Babe, wait! How do we end this?
By saying thank you.
Okay, you guys are awesome. Thank you. There's nothing more encouraging than you hitting that like button and commenting.
And don't forget to subscribe.
And I know there's more. You have a list. Might as well go down the list.
Right. Okay. Watch the video of this podcast on our Beautiful Step YouTube channel or on our website where you can actually download transcripts and show notes of the episode. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram.
If today's episode made your together even better, tell someone.
Okay, now.
Right now.
Today.
Okay.
You can take one step.
It's just one step.
Toward the beautiful relationship you want in your life.
You got this.